So in this video, I wanted to talk about the autopsy and the fact that it is an opinion and that we have to be careful with the words used in this document. It is an opinion-based document, but with a lot of, real medical knowledge. Also, I wanted to talk about the fact that contaminated evidence, which I think there is a lot of, and evidence that hasn't been provided correctly, could have changed the results even of this autopsy ultimately at the end. Okay, so also something else I'm going to be talking about is stage crime scenes, which is basically a criminal term for a crime scene that has been made to look like someone has died, disappeared, or committed suicide. And I thought that was quite relevant to the case. So I do have some information on that, which is actually quite interesting. So the first thing I want you to notice is the fact that it says opinion. And I think we need to realise that this is an opinion-based document, but with a lot of, like I said, medical knowledge and understanding. I'm not saying that it's completely wrong, but it is based off of assumptions and opinions, but that are likely to be correct, maybe. First thing I want you to see is where it says, according to investigation, that does indicate that they're using the evidence that they were provided by the police to help determine the cause of death. Something you need to remember with this is not to determine the reason and how she got to that freezer. This is just determining how she died. So if someone held that door shut, she would have still died from hypothermia. There still could have been foul play. What people are not realizing is that this document doesn't eliminate foul play. Okay, this just says that she died for hypothermia. If somebody fell off a building, we wouldn't know whether they were pushed off or if they committed suicide. And it's the same idea with this, in the sense that we don't know if someone held that door shut or there was some type of foul play before she died of hypothermia. Okay, it says video surveillance recorded the decedent entering the kitchen alone at approximately 3:32 hours on September 9th, 2017, but recordings did not clearly show her entering the hotel walk-in. So that does show there is some reason for doubt. Approximately 21 hours later, after she was documented entering the kitchen. Okay, so they found her body 21 hours later, as you know. At autopsy, the body was not frozen. So does that tell us that she was put in that freezer later than we thought? So when we assume she walked in that freezer, was she dead outside of the freezer, or was the freezer turned off and, I don't know, someone turned it on to make it look like she died in the freezer? I don't know, but it could be that she just wasn't in the environment to be frozen for that amount of time. So that should have been, to me, something that should have been looked at, especially by someone who does autopsies all the time. They should know it should take a bit longer for a body to defrost. Something else is where I noticed it said the autopsy did not reveal any trauma that would have caused or contributed to her death. A superficial abrasion, which is a scrape, was on the right ankle, and a contusion, a bruise, was on the right leg. There was no other evidence of external or internal trauma. Now, this might not have caused her death, but it could be something that was caused leading up to her death, and is something that was caused that was connected to the fact that there was foul play that linked to her death. So I think it's a bit wrong to basically try and word this in a way that it has no connection to her death, because it obviously does. We know that there's nothing in that freezer that could have caused her death, caused these injuries. But we see her walk up there with her shoe on and possibly socks on. Also, one is a bruise and the rest are scrapes. So she at some point hit herself on her leg, and then her leg was scraped. They're two different injuries. So I do think that's something that you need to pay attention to. Okay, so this is a website that I wanted to use to help explain a bit about how the forensics should have been done, what shouldn't have been done also, and stage, like I said, stage crime scenes. Um, it's called forensicmag.com. I will put the link in the description if you want to have a look yourself. And it is quite a good website to look at if you do want to get a better understanding. So this was the first thing I saw when I went onto this website, and I just want to read it because it is similar and links to what I want to talk about. And it says, a call comes in and officers race to the crime scene. Crime scene officers investigating a scene have a crucial responsibility to find and preserve evidence. In the past, we simply pulled on a pair of gloves and maybe a mask to filter out odours and got to work. Nowadays, we know that's not enough to protect scenes from unintentional contamination of evidence. Contamination is a serious problem that can ruin evidence and jeopardise a criminal case. And I think that is something that has happened within this Kenneka case and is very important to pay attention to. Um, Something else that stood out to me when reading this was where it said eliminating contamination at a crime scene can make or break a case. It's up to you to be diligent about protecting the scene and your evidence. And I think that basically says it all. We not taking enough evidence, contaminated evidence, and um, reading things wrong as well as professionals could make or break a case. Okay, so in this text, I thought it was interesting to read where it says, their first responsibility is to the victim. They are not necessarily thinking about scene preservation. As a result, they may inadvertently leave fingerprints, footprints, and even DNA evidence behind. And I think that is definitely something it makes sense that some DNA would be left behind by these officers or by the person that found her. But only in that part leading up to finding the body and not knowing she was in there and then making sure she was alive or dead. It says get fingerprint, shoe print patterns, DNA, etc. from each person for elimination purposes. And I didn't see anybody do that. Okay, I saw them put on a pair of gloves, but when it comes to giving contaminating the scene and not be letting people know and not making sure that you haven't contaminated the scene. I haven't seen any of that. It says once you've established who will enter the scene, limit contamination by wearing the proper protective clothing, okay? Tyvek suits, masks, gloves, and booties are essential. I only saw people wearing gloves. I didn't see anyone wearing any masks. I didn't see anyone wearing any suits, and I didn't see anyone wearing any special booties. Okay, so the fact that it's a crime scene and someone was dead and at the time they didn't know how, I think it's very important they should have done these things and they didn't. Okay, it says evidence is often on the floor. If you get blood or other evidence on your booties, change them. Didn't see any of that either. And then it says if you touch your eyes, scratch your nose, or cover your mouth when you cough, change gloves. Why? Because you will cross contaminate. There is so much that they didn't do that they should have done, and we wouldn't know this. Something else interesting is it says that um, some criminologists say there could be an epidemic of murders going overlooked during death investigations. Killers have learned to cover their tracks by staging crime scenes, hiding evidence, and otherwise throwing death investigations off track. So this is what I was talking about by making a death look like it was an accident that they've gone missing or they committed suicide when really it's a murder. And they go overlooked and it's more common now. Okay, so it does happen. It does happen when people say that this is definitely an accident. This is proof that this does happen. I can't say whether it is happening in this case, but it could be. And I feel that to some extent it has. It says everyone seems to agree on one thing. The stage crime scene has become more common. Okay? Phenomenon as the public has become more familiar and fascinated with detective work. And I would agree with that. Something else interesting says there's an appreciable number of cases that are missed because law enforcement does not follow a specific protocol, which is what I was talking about, where they were not wearing the Tyvek suits, they were not wearing the booties. And it can make or break a case. Okay, even the fact that they didn't do swabs or fingerprints. Why? That would be one of the first things I did to make sure I caught it and it wasn't contaminated. And it could be taking swabs and fingerprints that could have completely swayed the opinion of an accident, it being an accident. Something so small. We see this all the time on the news, in the media, these little things. People getting put in jail for like 25 years for things they haven't done, and all they had to do was take some DNA or take a fingerprint. So it's really important. Here it says, it clarifies what I said and what we read before, where it says, collect booties in a paper sack and send them for processing in case they have any evidence on them. Dispose of gloves and other items in a bag labelled as biohazard. All items you dispose of should be bagged and documented, but not thrown away. Save these items until you're certain they're not needed. And I do feel like they were just thrown away. I haven't seen any evidence showing that they kept these items, even the fact that they didn't wear half of the items they were supposed to wear. But I haven't seen anything that says that they didn't throw them away or that they were kept, but we'll leave that one there. It says DNA can be transferred from one crime scene to another through tools. The reason why I thought that was interesting was we do see a few times police walking around and leaving wet footprints. I can't remember whose video that was, but if you do know, you'll know what I'm talking about. They leave these wet footprints around, which means they come from somewhere wet. And if they're searching a scene and they've got gloves on, why have they not got nothing on their feet to stop this from happening? It's it's interesting. It says keeping contamination of evidence to a minimum is especially critical when investigating a homicide. Homicide crime scenes are ripe for potential DNA evidence. Collect as much evidence as possible. Even if DNA can't be lifted from a sample in the present, new methods may be available in the future. Okay? They've done none of this. They didn't do swabs, fingerprints, none of it. So there's nothing that can be found in it. This case is just going to be left as it is because they haven't done what they're supposed to do. And the evidence they've collected, I don't believe they've collected correctly, especially the surveillance evidence, the surveillance as digital evidence. They was given that by Crown Plaza. And I think if you watch, I think it's Mike Mecca, he does explain that it's quite easy to cut complete pieces of footage out. Moving on to the next, it says most contamination comes from the people investigating the scene. And I've seen footprints that could possibly be from police officers within the pictures they've taken themselves, and I've seen them walk all over the place in that kitchen. And that to me is a crime scene. That fingerprints should have been taken from everywhere. There should have been a lot more done as far as looking for evidence. Okay? It says that one of the most important ways to limit contamination is by limiting access to the scene. The amount of officers that were in and out of that place, that I don't even believe were on that log, even. It's crazy. Consider what types of evidence are present and the best method of collecting them. Figure out if you'll need additional staff or outside experts. The guy just found her, went out and just brought the officers in. There was no consideration of who should be in here and who shouldn't be.